Hello everyone, welcome to Questions and Reason. This is Sessions with the founder. It's the R, baby. It's the R. Today's program is brought to you by ESCOM. I have load shedding for the next 2.5 hours. But hey, at least I'm doing something productive for my time, right? So, back to sessions. Today I have a question. Are we doing enough to get our kids ready for the real world? In my view, we're not doing enough. If you look at my generation and the previous generation, most of them are too emotional. Somebody will pick their emotion over reason any time of the day, even in a situation where their emotion is getting in the way of a solution, right? And you can see niggas ain't ready for the world, bro. You're not ready for the real world, right? And what do? We go on and make things worse. We create competitions where kids are just rewarded for participation. You are given a star because you participated, not because you won. Everyone is a winner. What type of a competition is that where everyone is a winner? That's not how the world works. People need to learn that there's losses, and they need to learn how to deal with losses from an early age. You need to prepare your kids through that they'll lose things and they will gain things, that there will be unfair days and there will be fair days, and there will be days where fairness is on their side, and there will be days where favors are on their side, where it wasn't unfair to somebody, but it was, that privilege came to them. That's just how the world is. It is not just wrong and right, no, right? But we are not getting our kids ready enough for that. Somebody asked me if I would take my kids to boarding. I've been in boarding, and I'm so jealous with my kids. There's no way I would do something like that. Right? Excuse me. There is no way I will do something like that. Why? Because I want to make sure that they are ready to face the real world, that they're ready to face an unfair boss and still be mentally healthy and still not determine their lives according to one failure, one loss, one misfortune. Life is full of misfortunes, it's full of failures, but it is how we go through, right? The role of a bully when we're growing up. So somebody would come, abuse you emotionally, mentally, even physically, that you would be scared to go to school, that you would be scared to walk on the streets, until you put your emotions aside and say, listen, man, I have to learn how to deal with this guy, right? I need to still be able to live my life, love myself, not determine my life according to what he says, right? Even though he's there. So whether he's there or removed, I need to be able to deal with things, and eventually you find your way, right? So bullies have played a huge role in getting us ready for what the world has. Let's talk about the Jews. I love the history of the Jews because it's well documented. We can go and refer to it and see where they messed up and stuff like that, where they did what is good, how they recovered, right? So during the 7-Day War, that's the new state of Israel against its Arab countries, the surrounding countries which were Arabs, you know the names, Egypt, was so on, so on. So there were Jews who were living where? In Baghdad, in Iraq, which was an Arabic country. And there were Jews who were living in Africa, Ethiopia, right? So Israel feared for the Jews who were not within the borders of Israel. Even if they won the war, they felt like, we won the war, but what about our people? So they tried to send airplanes to Iraq, to Ethiopia, a huge migration where back to their land, right? But when you look at Iraqi Jews, the Iraqi government or Baghdad did not allow the Jews to live with their things, to sell their houses, to sell their cars. If you were leaving, you leave everything behind. This includes the money in the bank account, right? Imagine you leaving everything that you know, going to a strange country that you've never been in, just because of your ethnicity or because of your religious beliefs, right? So they left everything, but when they got to Israel, they faced discrimination. The Jews who were living in Israel felt like they were the true Jews who are native to the land, and called the other ones Arab Jews or Ethiopian Jews. Go back to the jungle in Africa because there's no place for you here, and other abuses like that. But you look at the mentality of the people who went there, right? They still managed, even when they came with nothing, living in tents, they managed to rebuild their lives. They didn't allow the bullies who are in Israel to determine their lives. And they didn't allow the fact that they lost their house, they lost their car, they lost their career, they lost money to stop them from rebuilding, right? These are people who are ready for the real world, bro. These are people who are ready. And throughout history, you see Jews losing everything and rebuilding, We've seen the Holocaust. We've seen the migration to America. We've seen slavery in Egypt and so on and so forth. The mentality of being able to lose everything and still rebuild, still regain. How will your kid, who you are telling that he's a winner, be able to do that? Because they're going to be confronted with rejection, they're going to be confronted with loss, they're going to be confronted with the fact that they are not able to succeed in what they want to succeed at that time. So what happens now? We have stress, we have mental issues, and when you look at people who are living on drugs now, right? Let's talk about drugs. People want to live on drugs or some type of intoxication just to get through the day. You know about that gentleman who's always drunk, who's always drinking. They drink to work, they drink coming back from work, they drink all the time. Or they smoking mushrooms. You get what I'm saying? And when you look at the history of drugs, people who created drugs were trying to understand mental illness. They were trying to understand schizophrenia. They were trying to understand insanity. So they would take these drugs and intoxicate themselves with them, to be detached from self, to be able to try to understand the problem of insanity, of schizophrenia or other psychological issues, so that they will be able to solve that problem, right? But instead, these drugs ended up on the streets, and people who engaged with them, some people are homeless today because they did drugs. Some people, the streets made them something else. You can't recognize your fellow brother, somebody who was doing good, who was healthy, who was mental. You can't recognize them. We've seen households where the parents lost everything. They lost the TV, they lost their pump, they lost every single thing. I mean, now they're losing even their doors. Why? Because their child who's addicted to drugs just took out the door and went and sold it so that he can get a fix, right? So it's because we are not readified enough for the world. The schools are not doing enough to get us ready for the world. The households are not doing enough to get us ready for the world. We need to make sure that the kids are ready for anything, bro. Like everything. They get abused by somebody who is in power. They get to understand that they can never be a victim to that person. Even though he has power, he doesn't have the power to control their lives. They can do with or without that person. They can leave a government and go and rebuild somewhere and still be prosperous, right? And not determine themselves according to insults that other people are throwing at them. People who are sick emotionally. Imagine you want to determine yourself according to how somebody else treats you, who's not well, who's not 100%. Imagine that. Isn't that a tragedy? That's a tragedy. And we see this cycle going on and on and on and on. You end up in a relationship with somebody who has not done the emotional work to be in a relationship, and you want to determine yourself according to how that person treats you, what the person said to you, and you end up being a junkie, you end up in jail, you end up, in all these negative situations, mentally unhealthy, suicidal and stuff, because you want to determine yourself according to how the world treats you, how people treat you, and that is not something you are used to dealing with. You need to know how to deal with it before it happens, so that you understand that that is not you. The world is unfair. That's just how it is. The world can be cruel. That's just how it is. The world can bring you misfortune, but that does not determine you, right? So when you get to that level, the level of losing a house, losing a career, losing your family, losing everything, and still be able to do it, that's the level that we need to be on. That's the level that our children need to be on. That there's no need for you to be reasoning or trying to convince a person who's emotional and who does not subscribe to reason. There's no need for you to waste your time to try and prove a point, right? If somebody doesn't get it and they don't want to get it, let them go, bro. Move on, right? That's when you're ready. All right, so I want to deal with the land question at the end of the session. So the land question is very, very difficult. Why is it difficult? Because of so many factors. But I just want to briefly start the conversation so that we can have more, right? So when you look at the issue of land in the country, the very suggestions that are being made were made in Darfur, right? In Darfur, the land belonged to the king, and everybody under the king would move around, yes, and subscribe to, go to the king and pay homage so that the king can allow them to roam around, or to have a certain place which does not really belong to them, but they can be able to stay there. Should anything happen and they are taken to royal court, they can be suspended and moved out of the village or of that place or whatever, right? But then Darfur became a superpower and an enslaving metropolitan empire, where now people are coming from everywhere in the world because Darfur is prosperous. Darfur makes slaves to rise to the highest level. People who are holy, the holy men, the Fukura, they would be attracted to that place because they get benefits. People from neighboring countries will be attracted to Darfur because why? Darfur gave them, privileges to build their lives. But then once it was powerful and people saw that if we try to fight the army of Darfur, we won't be able to succeed. We need to come up with a better plan for us to dismantle this power. So there were a lot of discussions and a lot of, policy making to say, how do we make sure that we dismantle Darfur? Another colonial project where now, the British Empire went and created a system of discrimination and privilege. Privilege for the natives, that is, if your great-great-grandfather from 100 years ago was native, and a discrimination against the settlers who came as slaves or who were attracted by the privileges of Darfur, right? Now, every privilege that was given to the settlers were taken back and given to what? To the natives. So after giving the natives those privileges, a war erupted because, these kids didn't know, the land that their fathers are coming from, right? They didn't know the land. If now you're taking these privileges, where are we supposed to go? Because our great-grandfather was here, our father was here, our grandfather was here. This is the only land we know. And we've heard of the Janjaweed. So these people would go to Chad, organize themselves militarily, get training, get weapons, and fight each other. And that is the instability of Sudan today, right? So we find Sudan flooded with arms, there's conflict everywhere. The kids who are fighting today don't know why they are fighting, why they're fighting, they have no idea. They were born in war, and then they took up arms to protect themselves and their families, right? And the problem is the land question. Land was taken from the settlers who had it, and you get the drill. Anyway, so when we have this type of history, we've seen it happen somewhere, we should have a better approach than that. We don't want South Africa to end up like Sudan, right? Anyway, that's all I have time for today. This is Questions and Reasons, Sessions with the Founder. Like, subscribe, comment, talk to your friends about it. Yeah, it's the R, baby. I'm out.